Hello and welcome to Check 1 2, where we give you the lowdown on testicular cancer by talking to survivors, advocates and supporters here at the world famous podcast studio Glasgow. In this episode of Check 1 2, we're going to be speaking to Thomas Kearins, who is ICW Communications Director and also in-ring referee for the company. So join us as we explore his rise from indie wrestling training to be one of the best refs in the business and now the Director of Comms at ICW. Stay tuned for an inside look on his fascinating career within the world of professional wrestling, and also learned how he's supported Cahonas over the years as well. Don't miss ICW Boots Your Baws, where you can buy tickets or you can watch on Triller TV Plus when that comes out. So yeah, here we are, Thomas Kearins. Do you know what's been killing me though is the photo that we took when we're all together? Is it George Animal Steele's pose you're doing, or whose is it?
I don't know.
I don't know. Because do you know what I mean? I'm like, that's so familiar to me, and the only one thing I could find was George Animal Steele doing that. And I thought,
I don't know, it's just one of those silly poses I think I struck at the time. But yeah, Jester said that as well. Jester was like, oh yeah, that's a great one, and I was like, does somebody do that already? Yeah,
that is definitely like very the animal.
Yeah,
I was going for the LOD thing.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
But, yeah,
it's a really good photo.
No, it's a great photo, man. It's actually my background on that as well.
Oh, nice.
But thanks very much for coming on Check 1 2, and it's great to kind of have these kind of conversations with guys who maybe haven't necessarily had testicular cancer, but have had that experience with it and want to kind of raise awareness. I suppose just the first thing off, just tell us a bit about yourself and what you do. And
cool. I've been trying to condense this recently to some sort of elevator pitch, but to no avail. So yeah, my name's Thomas Kearins. I'm a professional wrestling referee, primarily for Insane Championship Wrestling. People, when you say that, kind of go, ICW, so what is that? And you go, Grado, and they go, right, got you. So I've been refereeing there for about 10 or so years. I'm a marketing graduate from UWS, so whilst I was studying there to get my degree, was doing work experience in the office. That's now led in the last few months, after almost 10 years doing that as well, becoming the Director of Communications for ICW. As we go into this new era.
Mm-hmm. It's the big thing, it's like when you see all the press stuff, like the new era of like ICW. I mean, for you, like what does that mean for you? It's obviously having been starting off kind of the lowest rung of it to now being like the Director of Comms. Like that must be huge for you personally as well.
Yeah, and I think the advantage that I have is that we've been there. Myself, Scot Reed, Adam Carell, Lee Gregg, who are now the sort of key stakeholders in this new company, still operating as ICW, with Duncan Gray, who runs Triple G Events as the CEO. We've been there for 10 years, so we kind of know what works, we kind of know what doesn't. But coming out of COVID, everything was still a bit of a haze. So now that, Mark Dallas has stepped away, I've said this before, but it's kind of about paying tribute to the rich history that was built from Mark's vision, but taking it forward with a sort of new lick of paint, evolving to the sort of changing trends of consumer preferences and stuff like that. Like wrestling fans, all you have to do is scroll Twitter or X and their opinion changes like the weather.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, for us, the challenge is keeping our ear to the ground with that and adapting to those changes and what our fans want as well. I think for a while, especially with the WWE network deal that we had, there were certain limitations there, and it was bittersweet because ICW built its brand on this over 18s, edgy, anything can happen sort of anti-authority brand.
Yeah. And
then we're signing with the biggest professional wrestling sports entertainment company in the world, which absolutely had its benefits. If I could rewind time, I would do it all again. because without that deal, we wouldn't have been paid through COVID, and there might not be an ICW today. So personally, I'll always be grateful to WWE, Mark, Duncan for what they did. But yeah, moving forward, it's kind of about, right, what worked before that? Because admittedly, a lot of fans turned off because they thought that we were too censored. So now it's about reminding people, well, here's why we're the best over 18s professional wrestling company in the world.
Yeah, and that's funny. That's what I was going to ask as well. So I take it there was a lot of kind of like input from WWE creative as such as to what you could and couldn't do then?
I wasn't directly involved in a lot of the conversations from a creative standpoint. And that is up to, you know, like Scot Reeds now, who is director of creative, Mark Dallas at the time, Duncan. But from what I heard, there were certain requirements. You know, don't do this, don't say that. It wasn't like the handcuffs weren't on as tight as people might think, but it was enough for us to notice, oh well, there's actually people turning off now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that for us is, you know, that's enough to go, we're messing with the recipe here. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's kind of like, and with that, there's a certain amount of trepidation on our part. I'm just trying to think back to when it was happening. Even without those, you know, black and white, don't do this, you maybe would write something and then you'd put a line through it going, I don't know if I even want to put this in there because for all we know, they won't like it. So it's not necessarily that they said no to 90% of stuff that was written, but there were certainly limitations there, and because of that, a certain amount, as I say, trepidation, because you're like, the reins are on a wee bit tighter here.
That kind of almost kind of self-censor type thing. You go, they might not like that, rather than just putting it forward.
And that's not to say, like, we probably could have pushed the boundaries a wee bit more, but just from the experience of maybe one or two things not getting through, we reined it back in because we were getting paid to provide content for the biggest, you know, sports entertainment streaming service in the world. So naturally, we were going to follow the rules at that point. But yeah, now I think it's, you know, the deal's no longer there. It's, again, similar to when Mark was here. It's about paying tribute to that history. The WWE Network deal for us was massive, opened people's eyes to ICW across the world who maybe weren't exposed to it before. But now we're going to use that popularity to build moving forward.
I mean, you see that as well. Like, see the amount of kind of like Scottish wrestlers that, you know, have, you know, been in the roster at ICW who are now, you know, off in these kind of international promotions as well. It's testament to, like, you know, the level of talent that ICW wants to bring in and nurtures as well. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it's crazy because although I've been in ICW for 10 plus years now, I've been a referee for 14. And when I was coming in training as a wrestler when I was a kid, your Joe Coffeys, your Mark Coffeys, your Alba Fires, your Isla Dons, like, they were in the same classes and stuff like that. And so I came up with them. Right.
And it's funny now to see people coming in the door for the first time at GPWA, for example, ICW's training school, and say, you know, I just want to get to the level they were at, you know, what were they doing? What sort of things were they doing? And I was like, you'd be surprised what they made work back in the day. Like, the training programs in 2007, 8, 9 were, you know, they were in their infancy. And so they kind of just took what they could and picked people's brains, and they definitely didn't have what we have at our disposal now. So if they can make it work and get to the biggest stage in the world, people that are coming in the door now that are asking us the question, asking that, you know, Jack Jester, the head coach, the question, what do I need to do? Well, it's just, you know, mouth shut and eyes and ears open, and you'll be off to the races. Yeah, and put in the work as well. Yeah, like it must be good as well, like having that, like, to be able to train, like the way he's do, like, you train these up and coming, you know, kids essentially, like to kind of be part of something that you're passionate about as well. So how did you, like, was it through your training to become a wrestler that you got into the kind of refereeing aspect of it then? Yeah, so there was a place in Linwood, so it's kind of like my dad worked with a guy who took classes at it. It was all very kind of under the table stuff, because at the time I was 12 years old, my dad just knew I loved wrestling, and he was like, how am I going to make my son happy at the weekends here? Spoke to the guy he worked with, put a word in, signed a scrunched up piece of paper saying that they were liable if anything happened. And sent off on the Sunday afternoon to Linwood. But I mean, met a lot of incredible people there, people that I'm still friends with, but it was a tip. It was like the kind of place you'd wipe your feet on the way out.
Right.
But without those experiences, I would have never gotten to where I did and where I'm going now. So I originally trained to wrestle, use that term loosely, as I say, I was 12 years old. But by the time I got to 14, I was doing exams and stuff at school. I'd just got braces. My mum didn't want my braces getting broken. It was a whole thing.
Aye.
So I was like, I still really want to stick about training. Admittedly, I also didn't enjoy getting hit in the face. So I thought, right, how do I stick about, still see the friends that I'd made, but not take those bumps and potentially risk not getting to go to my prelims. So I started refereeing the training matches. And at the time, there was a spot opening up on one of the shows. I went along, refereed it, and the rest is history. I was 14 years old at the time, and now I'm
excellent, though,
29.
Man. Yeah. To be part of that though as well, like as a wrestling fan, like you must have just absolutely loved it, eh?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so cliche, but it's the best seat in the house. Like, it's like, I mean, people grow up and they're like, I think maybe if you like football, you want to grow up and you want to be Messi. I mean, nobody necessarily grows up wanting to be the referee. I think that came with age. Like even at 14, like I kind of had ideas to go. I thought maybe I'll go back when I'm 16 or 17 and wrestle. But the more I refereed and the more that growing up, you're learning so many things about life anyway. You kind of learn as you're going. Oh, wait a minute, like my strengths lie in what you need to do to become a good referee here. Your communication and really good people skills, general common sense, which surprisingly a lot of people lack in the professional wrestling industry. And so I just realised that it was a better fit. Yeah. And for me, I think if you're not putting your all into the wrestling side of things, like unless you're willing to sacrifice everything, you're taking a spot away from someone else who is. And for me, I could never do that. Yeah. So it would have just been let's see how it goes. And I'm the first person now to say, if somebody says that, like, it's maybe the wrong approach. So I couldn't in good faith go back to a class just to fill numbers and just to have a laugh, because this isn't the kind of industry that you have a laugh. I mean, you have a laugh in it, but it's not, it's serious. Yeah. You need to be dedicated. And I was able to dedicate to being a referee, but the wrestling aspect was past me by that point. Yeah,
I suppose the kind of like the skill level and all that as well. If somebody got better, then it's about hurting your training partner and things like that. Must be a conscious thing as well.
Yeah, I mean that's why, just to use GPWA as an example, we have an intake system that basically, so you do your 8-week intake in block 1, that happens all the way through to block 1, 2 and 3, and only then after passing those 3 blocks are you granted access to the main class, right, which has your intermediate classes and your advanced. So by the time you've already done your intake, you're at a stage where you're capable of being in there and being safe and things like that. What I hate to see now is certain schools using, we talk about filling the numbers and the registry, the register rather, it's like just throwing people in with no sort of consideration for the skill level and stuff like that, and it's very dangerous. Like I've seen, even as a referee, being in there with people that have been pros for nearly 20 years or 20 years plus, injuries happen all the time. So it really surprises me that you don't hear more about that on the training side, because unfortunately for these schools that are teaching people how to do things in an environment that isn't particularly safe, it's going to take for something really bad to happen for them to start appreciating what sort of steps and protocols need to be put in place. Yeah. But again, that's not necessarily my concern at the minute. My concern is GPWA, great host of trainers, great classes, great students. And really excited for what's to come. Yeah,
and just like as well, when you're saying like not like about kind of being a referee, and it's like, but you look at the kind of referees throughout, well, certainly like our childhood, I mean, there's well known as some of the wrestlers, the Hebner brothers, Teddy Long, all these guys had their place within like the kind of the ethos of what you thought was professional wrestling or sports entertainment, as it's sometimes called as well. But it's like I think if you got a good referee, it adds to whatever creative's happening when you're watching it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the way I try to describe it is like a referee is a supporting actor in a play or in a scene or in a, insert creative sort of thing here. But I think what's important, there's a very fine line between being that supporting part and being too in your face and being part of, you can be part of you can help to tell the story of the match, but what isn't good is when you're cutting in front of wrestlers or you're trying to make it about you, or like sometimes you'll see referees on wrestling posters and you're like, it's never the referee that sells the event. Yeah. It's the wrestlers, and people that are paying good money to come and watch the show are coming to watch the wrestlers. So, for me, it's just about how can I ensure that the matches that I'm officiating are at, the highest quality they can be, help them tell the story, but not being a distraction.
Yeah.
And I think as long as you do that, you'll generally get a good rep. In situations like this, like the Hebner brothers and stuff, until they were in storylines, I doubt there were necessarily people saying, we're buying a ticket to go and see them and stuff, but they were always appreciated for being good referees. Yeah. So your Mike Chiodas, your Chad Pattons, John Cones. They're not people that are selling out the venues, but without those people in the middle of the ring, you would never have had the matches go as smoothly as they did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's almost like an insurance policy. You never know that you need one until something goes really wrong.
Yeah.
And that is how I kind of think of refereing.
And it's probably nobody really was aware of the Hebner brothers until I think it was Errol that was doing the Montreal screw job. Yeah. I don't think anybody really knew who he was really until that happened. And it's like, did Errol Hebner know?
Yeah, I know. It's like ICW as well. Like if somebody clips this with a footage of me wrestling rather, I wouldn't hold it against them, because ICW is different in the sense of, it is over 18s. It's not necessarily, it's not, everybody's kind of part of the act. Like you've got Neil the Wee Man Bratchpiece was an entrant in the Square Go a few weeks ago, which is our version of the WWE Royal Rumble.
Right.
It's like the Scottish version of it. And the Wee Man was an entrant. Now he's a wrestling manager. He's not a wrestler, but it totally suited ICW because stuff happens in our company that doesn't necessarily happen elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so I've done things where I've been part of storylines, like Drew McIntyre and Jack Jester sacked me when they were part of the Black Label. I came back as a referee. This sounds ridiculous even saying this. But I came back as Dirk McIntosh was his name, and he was picked out of the crowd to referee a match because a referee was injured. Just so happened there was a guy in the crowd with a wig and sunglasses and a fake moustache. At the time, Thomas Kearins was fired.
Right.
So this was how I got my way back into ICW, which is ridiculous. I'm sure there'll be somebody on a podcast at some point that will criticise it. I dare say they have. But it's the world of ICW. That's what makes it so great. It's totally different.
Yeah.
And it doesn't insult your intelligence. Obviously, that's me with a wig and moustache.
Yeah.
But it's funny. People can go, they can have a drink, they can unwind, and they can watch good wrestling and good storylines.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the thing, it's like ICW has always been known to kind of push those boundaries anyway, and I think that's probably what a lot of people gravitate towards in the first place. And like we kind of spoke about it before when we kind of met the first time, is that, oddly, like people don't really know the rich history of like professional wrestling in Scotland, and it was beloved so much. Like people loved going to wrestling events, and to have ICW, come out of the ashes of what was kind of left after the kind of the 80s and 90s, where it all kind of like died down and all these wee indie promotions went away, to have ICW come out of that and be what it is like now. And the fact that he's got to the point where you were getting shown on, international, network is massive,
Yeah, and it wasn't without its difficulties. Selfishly, I kind of came in when I was so I waited until I turned 18 to contact ICW because it was an over 18s promotion. Naively thought, I need to be 18 to work there. I think Noam Dar was getting snuck in the back door of Apollo to wrestle there at 16. But that was about 2013, and that was when it was starting. The first Insane Fight Club was being filmed. The Vice documentary had come out, which was the British Wrestler. That was kind of the thing that focused on Grado's sort of viral fame and how he went from filming videos in a garage in Stevenson to main eventing the ICW show that year. But a few years before that, Mark Dallas has told this story before, but his first show in Maryhill Community Halls, I think, drew like 30 people.
Right.
And that's pretty humbling. And a lot of people would quit at that point. So kudos to Mark for continuing, because it was only through him speaking to, you know, like Jack Jester at the time wanted to try a new character that was a bit more risque and over 18s and, you know, adult focused. And he came on board. And so slowly but surely there started to be that attention there. They moved from the smaller room in the Maryhill Community Halls to the main one. Moved eventually to the, I think, it was Apollo, which is now Walkabout, maybe it was downstairs.
Oh yeah, of course, aye.
Went from there. It was like just this natural progression of you go, get a wee bit more popular, do a slightly bigger venue, you know, keep going. And, you know, it was the O2 ABC, it was the Garage, it was the Barrowlands, and then, you know, within 6 or 7 years, you're doing the Hydro for the biggest independent professional wrestling show in 35 years.
Which is what an achievement as well, to kind of go with that. I mean, my first kind of introduction to it, I don't know if it was necessarily ICW, but it was definitely Jack Jester and Grado. And let's say, like, being for Stennismuir, we had the Dolby Hall, and that's where all the wrestling events took place. But Stennismuir Football Club done an event, like, and they had wrestlers there, and it was they two were the kind of like the main event. And I remember watching it, and it was kind of like spitting with rain, and I was like, how are these guys managing to hold their footing on the mat in the way that, and it was such a great event that actually, like, my son, he must have been 4 or 5. That's what sparked his, like, we had a, you know, he's not so much now, but he still kind of watches stuff, but his obsession with wrestling and wrestling figures and all that came because he seeing those guys perform live. And I think that's the great thing about, like, not blowing smoke, but ICW, the fact that it might be an over 18 event, but see folk who want to have a chance of going to see a wrestling show in Scotland, because not very many come internationally to Scotland, so to have that's there on your doorsteps, I love it. Like, I genuinely love it. So
it's great to hear that sort of feedback, because I guess for us, that's why, you know, with the launch of Blockbuster, which is now a family-friendly brand, we can allow families for a much lower cost than maybe a big American company coming across. We're allowing families to come at the weekend and see the closest thing to what they watch on television. We're the only wrestling company in this country that can do that, because we've got the production levels. You know, we've got the screens, we've got the lighting, we've got the sound, you know, the ring, the barriers. It's small things that, as a kid, like, I remember playing with my figures, and you would make, right, these videotapes of the barriers, and you would, you know, pick random things, and, like, it was all part of the experience for you and what you associated with what you watched on television. And it sounds silly, like barriers, but if you're a mum or a dad and you can only afford to maybe take your kids to one thing this month, because it's expensive in the way that it's a much lower ticket price than, say, a WWE at the Hydro, but it's still expensive for families. You're asking families to come out on a Friday or Saturday night. You know, you're paying for juice and crisps or whatever when you're there. Maybe they want a t-shirt, they want a light up glow stick, then, you know, take your pick. So it's not lost on us that people do that, but what we need to do is ensure that the quality reflects what they're choosing to do with a Friday night, their Saturday night, their Sunday night. And I think we do that really well. So we cater to families with Blockbuster. We've got ICW for our over 18s and GPWA for training. Which
is incredible. You've got 3 arms of something that, you know, I, like, 15 years ago was playing to 30 people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is though. Like, see those wee shows, I always think, like, and I always appreciate, like, see when Jack Jester and Grado did it, there was no squashing of their performance. They performed as if they were performing in front of the full garage crowd. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it was. I think that's what sold it. And see, especially if you do, like, with Blockbuster, and you've got, see, for me going in, I would get to have a good time with my kid, and my kid just looks at wrestlers like superheroes anyway. So, you know, that content, it doesn't have to be that over 18 thing when you're focusing on the wee-ins, and I think that's awesome that you do that as well. Like,
I think it's cliche, but, like, Lee, you know, Jester would tell you, it doesn't matter how many people are in the crowd. Like, they've paid the same amount of money to see you wrestle in front of 10 people or 1,000. So it's about, again, giving people their money's worth. And some people will cut corners and they won't provide a good show, but that, again, is not our concern. Our concern is about providing value for money. And yeah, like, you remember people that wrestled for ICW performing in its fond memories. Do you know what I mean? And those same names, not necessarily Grado at the minute because he's superstardom radio host, but Jack Jester, certainly an ICW, a blockbuster. He's going to perform with, he's going to put as much effort into that as he would if it was at the Asylum, which holds 100 plus people, the Garage 400, or we do the Barrowlands at SWG3, it's upwards of 600 to 1,000. It's always going to be, you're not insulting people, you're giving them their money's worth regardless.
Aye, great as well. And I think stuff like this helps as well. Like, see, like podcasts and the amount of wrestling podcasts that have kind of sprung out of like the podcast boom, I think it's certainly got people that I know back into wrestling because they're hearing, I think the kind of big one that folk were first tuning it was Mega Talk is Jericho, obviously with his, and then like Wrestle Daft that Grado done as well. Do you know what I mean? So it's like having all these wee accessible things. I think when kayfabe kind of broke away a little, obviously, like, and you could see, you'd watch like the Vice documentaries and you've seen the back of it. I think it actually helped grow a fan base for a lot of companies as well. So
I think people naturally really like a peek behind the curtain. And I think with with the internet, you're not hiding anything anymore. So it's almost, again, it's a fine line in wrestling, so different. Like, just going back to your earlier point there, like, it's probably one of the few industries where, you could be performing to 50 people on the Friday night and then go and do an arena on the Sunday with thousands.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of like any creative industry, like singers, I guess, similar. You could be performing in a bar on a Friday night and doing a bigger show at the weekend. But it's there's nothing like it. It's almost hard to describe to people when they ask. Like, I still, my in-laws will ask, and I'm still working on my elevator pitch on what I've been doing during the week because see, trying to condense what professional wrestling is. It's crazy. And as you say, like, those documentaries, like, without them, I'd really, ICW was on the up anyway, but without the Vice documentary, without Insane Fight Club 1 and 2 from BBC, even Rogue to Wrestler just before COVID, like, without that, it maybe wouldn't have opened a lot of people's eyes to what ICW is. So it's not, the pros for me outweigh the cons. There will always be people that criticise, you shouldn't be seeing what happens behind the scenes. We know Tony Stark isn't Iron Man. Yeah. We know Batista isn't Drax. Like, we can see the behind the scenes of Guardians of the Galaxy and still go and enjoy the film. Yeah. What ruins it is when you know what the ending is. Yeah. Aye. So we don't let them know the ending. Yeah. But we know these guys aren't actually going to kill each other in the car park. Aye. Well, it's a bit like, like Jack Jester, Lee, they're two very distinctively different people in it, and from a guy and then putting a contact lens in and then becoming this whole persona. I think that's the thing, you buy into what you're watching, and I agree. I think Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. isn't Iron Man, but you buy in it because you love it, and you're always going to get these purists that are. And there's a place for everybody, and that's what you want. But as long as the product's good at the end of the day, and you and both the purists and the casual fan can walk away and go, that was fucking good. That's all you can hope for, really. Yeah, that's our aim as well. Like, it's that balancing act. It's people. It's when people say wrestling's fake, and you try to give them that. But do you think movies are fake? Well, yeah, but I still enjoy them. And it's like, well, how's wrestling any different? Because it's a live performance. Yeah. People generally think it's totally different. But again, it's like the theatre. Like, if you go to watch a theatre performance and they're all coming out the stage door at the end of the night and meeting their friends or family with their bouquets of flowers, like the villain's going to be at, but at the end, the curtain call, whatever, when they come out and they bow and stuff, like
the Wicked Witch and Wicked, isn't he actually the witch?
But it's also one of the most popular stage performances of all time.
Exactly.
So it stands to reason. But as you say, you're never going to please everybody. So all we can do is work for our fans. We know what they like. And if there's people that are discovering ICW for the first time, be it through live events or Triller Plus TV, which we're now streaming on worldwide, then we'll welcome them as well. What we don't care about is the people that are going to sit and criticise us all day, because they've already tuned out.
Yeah.
It's just about focusing on the fans that we've got, welcoming in new ones and seeing what works and giving them value for money.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the thing, anybody who's maybe went away, if you create enough buzz, they're going to go, what's happening over there?
It's funny you should say that, but we were discussing that in the office before I came over. So this Sunday is the highest selling show in our studio, the Asylum, which is in Townhead in Glasgow. And sometimes we'll have a nosy at the list, because we have access, obviously, when we build the event on Universe, which is part of Ticketmaster. You can see who's booking. And, you'll see those names that were saying X, Y, and Z on Twitter maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, really bashing the product, and they're back.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would be petty and say, oh, well, they shouldn't be coming back. They didn't like us back then. It's fine.
Yeah.
This is subjective. What's great for us is to be able to sit with a coffee and go, oh, remember they really disliked what we were doing 5 years ago? Well, we must be doing something right now.
Yeah. Because it's a bit like anybody as well. Like, see if you've not got a season ticket to a football game and you think the team that you support's playing rotten, you go, I'm never going back to see them again. And then when things are on the up again, you go, I'm going to go back.
Yeah, which is fine. Like that's it. These things, it ebbs and flows. Like, as I say, you're never going to please everybody 100% of the time.
Yeah. I suppose as well, it's like I better kind of try and circle back to why we're here, and it's out, testicular cancer awareness and things like that as well. I could talk wrestling all day, I really could, man. Honestly, I could. But the good thing is that Cahonas and ICW, we've got a kind of event that you guys are graciously doing an association with us. Can you just tell people a bit about that as well, and then go from there?
Yeah, so Richie and I had spoken before, and we were kind of like, I was always really keen, because I'd seen the great work that you'd done with football clubs and, like the Glasgow Warriors and stuff as well. How can we announce our support of Cahonas in a fashion that suits ICW? And so we have launched our event called ICW Butch Your Baws, which is in tribute to Billy Connolly's Billy Bites Your Bum performance from the late 70s, I want to say, maybe early 80s. And it's an association with Cahonas Scotland. We had the press release go out last week. It was covered, like your wrestlers in the ring with your sort of awareness cards and stuff like that. Don't want to give too much away for what's planned for the night, but it's going to be really good. It's an ICW show. It's not... It's been marketed slightly differently, just because we were really keen to see Cahonas, raise awareness of the important work that you're doing. So it is still a wrestling show, but there's going to be things in there. There'll be, I don't want to give too much away, but it's on the 28th of April at the Garage in Glasgow. You can get tickets now at universe.com/ICW. If you don't stay in the UK, you can watch live on Triller Plus TV.
Brilliant. And we're looking forward to it. Like, and it's amazing that we've got the opportunity to do that, because Richie's a wrestling geek as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, the amount of times we're in the office, just it's like, oh, we're meant to be doing work, and we're just talking about wrestling. But it's so obviously before I joined Cahonas, and you had done a run and kind of donated money. Like, how did that come about, and why did you choose Cahonas as your charity to do that run for?
I really admired the work that was being done online. Like, a lot of charities or third sector organisations will maybe be online, but they'll not necessarily be active. But like, I really love that you're always beating that drum of check yourself. It doesn't take long. Like, it sounds silly, but like, and for lack of a better term, dumbing it down. Like, it's not overcomplicated, but I think people, just because of the fear associated with self-checks and stuff like that, will put it off and stuff like that. I think Cahonas Scotland and the messaging really speaks to younger people, I would say, because at the time, like when I ran for Cahonas Scotland, I had a scare fairly recently before that. Thankfully it was all clear, but without seeing the social media posts and stuff like that and the constant awareness work that was being done by Cahonas, I probably wouldn't have checked. And you could sit and say, oh well, you were fine anyway, like to play devil's advocate, but some people, you know, it might just take that post on X or Instagram or Facebook that they're scrolling through on a Tuesday and go, oh yeah, good point, maybe I should give myself a check. Maybe they've never done it.
Yeah.
And it could really be the difference between, you know, life or death for people, which is huge.
And that's what, like, we kind of saying, like, when I'm going out doing talks, it's always one thing. It's like, it's not an overly complicated message, you know, and it is that kind of, it's really easy. It's just check yourself once a month. It takes 2 minutes. You know, for me, it takes a minute. You know, being the old one ball, but it's certainly like it's so easy to do, and it's nice specialist equipment. You know, it's in the house with your hands. You know what I mean, and that's it. Or if you've no hands, get somebody else to do it. You know, it's as easy as that. But you know, and I suppose that's sort of testament to like the work that kind of Richie put in. You know, he'll tell his story and hopefully he comes on and does an episode of this and tells us and it's kind of full. But, you know, the fact that he was, you know, doing this voluntary and was able to churn out the type of content that he was and doing the campaigns that he was able to do it was phenomenal. And the fact that, like we say, like if you can get one person to go and do a check, you've won a watch, like, and I think that certainly was the case in me, like, you know, came across that, done my check, found it, and I've been entirely grateful to Richie, and I get to work with him now as well, which is awesome, you know. So so see, when you kind of had your scare, was it something that you kind of did you know about doing checks? Was it something that you kind of, you know, because I always say that we never really get taught these things, so was it something you were aware of before that?
I was aware of it, but it was just kind of general, like maybe I'd seen it elsewhere, like growing up. Like at the time I was early 20s, obviously you kind of, I say obviously, probably not obviously, you know about it in school. Like we were never taught about that in school, which I think is crazy. The things that they teach you in school, but they, you know, they'll miss out things like that, and it's like, but that's probably, you know, a whole other podcast. So no, like for me, like the Cahonas stuff, it was more so like, here's how we actually do it.
Yeah.
Which again sounds so silly, but it's like you don't know what you don't know, and it's like you might think something's totally normal, and then when you actually see what a self-check guide's like and what you're meant to do, and you do it right, well then that's when you notice maybe an irregularity or something like that. But for me, it was just a wee lump, get checked by a GP who then referred me, but the space between the referral and the scan was the longest. I feel like it was certainly weeks, maybe months of my life, because as a kid you're like a total, like you freak out about everything anyway.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, I'm obviously dying. It's just ridiculous. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, I went, had my ultrasound, and they were able to tell me there and then, like, oh no, this is something else entirely. It was like calcium.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, right.
I build up a calcium that you get. But they were like, I mean, it's absolutely there. Like there's a mass there, but it's completely fine.
Yeah, aye.
So I didn't feel like a total idiot.
Yeah,
so
aye.
I was like,
how you going?
Yeah, that's your other testicle. But yeah, without that, like, just for me, like the weight that was taken off my shoulders that day, like I remember walking to work. I worked in Braehead at the time, so I went from the Queen Elizabeth, which was the Southern General at the time, walked to my work at Braehead, and I was just like, just felt so relaxed.
Yeah.
I had the best shift of my life in Argos. But because for weeks prior to that I'd been doing nothing but freaking out, and I didn't tell anybody either, because I was like, I was almost so terrified of the whole situation that I thought, if I even speak about it, I'm going to have to give it more time. Like I'm going to have to dedicate more time to explain to people what it is. You'll have your parents or your partner or your friends, oh, what is it? Like, are you okay? Like, each to their own. Like, but at the time, I remember just thinking, I think I'll just keep it to myself. And then as soon as I had the scan and said I was fine, I was on the phone to everybody like, oh,
this is
for the last month, if I've been a dick, it's because I've been freaking out over this. So I apologise. But like, now I know what I'm looking for as well. Like, and I do monthly self checks, and take my time, do it properly. And it is, I owe that to Cahonas Scotland, because it's one of the few places that I saw where it actually went into depth on here's the resources and here's how to do it. And I think sometimes it is just like, obviously the message is check your balls, but some, like back in the day, like that's what it felt like. It felt like, oh yeah, like you're just meant to check yourself, and you kind of were like, how?
Yeah, aye.
Do you know what I mean?
I know, because you do, and you hear like, like the social media or even just the internet, like, like you'll say folk, like, you just check it and you do it, and it's like, yeah, okay, but can you just go into that little bit of detail? Because otherwise you're just fumbling around in the dark. It's like, and we do that enough anyway.
I was going to say that, you got there before me.
I always come quickest, mate, it's fine.
I think there's such a stigma attached to it as well. Like, people are embarrassed to talk about it, which is crazy. It's like women talking about smear tests. Like, there's still, coming from a marketing and comms background, like, and seeing the work that's being done just now to try and break down the barriers so that people don't feel as uptight and embarrassed and self-conscious about it. Like, it is your health at the end of the day. Like, it's literally the most important thing in your life.
And it's the big push as well. Like, we still get some companies who, say they'll say, can you send us some promotional stuff through, or what it is you want to put out in our comms? And they'll come back and say, oh, can you change that? You can't say the word balls. Like, what? What are you talking about? It's like, it's what we're talking about, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but you've got to aim your like our message to the kind of the lowest common denominator, you know what I mean? Is for somebody to be able to go, right, okay, that's what I need to do. Because if you over-medicalise something, folk are just going to switch off from it. If it's over-complicated and over this, and I think that's, again, testament to Richie breaking that down and going, no, it's a simple thing, and it's a simple bit of your body, for all that it is. It's like, it's check your balls, not your testicles or your bits, or it's actually checking your balls,
I don't think you're in the wrong for saying that either, because it, again, comms background kicking in, but it doesn't care how you do it, just get the message out there. Like, get it to the most amount, obviously you're targeting it to males and certain demographics and stuff, but who cares? Say Baws, say balls, say bollocks, say testicles, whatever works. See, as long as at the end of the day the person you're targeting checks the balls after a shower or whatever, and they can know, right, we're good, or need to book an appointment here, job done. So who cares? Shut up.
Exactly.
Like, it's crazy.
It's mental, because it's like anything. Like, you see, if you're out in the pub and you go to your pal, like, you check your testicles, though. Hey, what do you mean? But if you go, mate, do you check your balls? Aye. Exactly. It's that simple. Like, and especially Scottish men were so bad at communicating health issues anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so, to open that dialogue, you have to use colloquial language. So wherever you are in the country and whatever you call them it. That, I think that's the big selling point. It's like, if you're not for the West Coast, and you don't call them Baws, but you call them ghoulies, fine, call them ghoulies, and I think that's it.
Yeah, call them what you want. As long as you're getting the message out there, which Cahonas Scotland's doing very well at the minute. So.
So as well as that, like, see, like, if you kind of like look back at yourself as that younger self, there's this kind of argument, within certain of the medical communities that, maybe, you shouldn't be telling guys to check as often as you check. And my argument is that, we're told so much to say, can we go, men are terrible at getting their health checked, but don't check that, because it might cause fear and kind of the stigma around it. Do you think if you got taught more about it at school, and it was normalised from that kind of young, malleable brain age, do you think that would have kind of stood you in better stead, when you first went, there might be a problem?
Absolutely. Like, that's, do we go into it too heavily? But like, schools in general, the curriculum, like, to use a pretty basic comparison, but like, people talk about being taught algebra in school, but they'll not be taught how to do like their taxes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's similar to those sort of classes. Like you've got your RE and stuff like that, and you'll be told about, you know, don't do this, don't do that, and the curriculum will be centred around all this stuff that maybe, you know, quite rightly, if it's a particular school that supports it, but maybe the Bible, for example. But it's like, right, that's great, but the people that are sitting in front of you in this class just now have, you know, real bodies, they're real people.
Yeah.
Could you please tell me something that could save my life?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Instead of talking about why, you know, whatever. But that's, again, as I say, another podcast for another day. But to answer it plainly, no, like we're not taught about that in my school anyway. And I don't want to say the name of it because I'm sure, again, great people there, but it doesn't. It didn't tick the boxes for a lot of people. Yeah, because it never. Like. It almost seems silly to think that schools don't talk about it. Yeah. So why wouldn't you?
I mean, thankfully as well, like as part of like my role coming in and do the communication, community engagement stuff, when you're going to it and you get the right person, it's a no-brainer, and you're going to schools and you've got, I mean, every school I've been to has been great. I mean, they've really been fab, and you've even got Jordan Hill school, like, you know, their kids have done a whole kind of campaign, and this will come out, you know, in probably in kind of April time, like all the work that they've done and money they've raised for Cahonas, and we've done a talk there, and then it was the feedback you got from the students was amazing, and you kind of go, that's why we do what we do, you know, and it's that simple thing, you know, you'll get taught for, and this is Richie's idiom as well, like you'll get taught for a young age how to look left and right before you cross the road, but you'll not get taught how to save your life as such. So, so for us, it's great that schools are jumping on board. But even like I've done talks for the NHS, and you're going, like, that's the NHS. But I mean, again, I'm grateful, you know, because it keeps me able to kind of get out there and talk and use that as a bigger platform. But it's certainly something that that we're grateful for, and especially, you know, as you mentioned before, the fact that we've got, like, you know, sports club like the Warriors, you know, like yourselves, you know, shouting for the rooftops about self-checks and Cahonas just in general, you know, it allows us to kind of nationally push that message out there,
Yeah. I think that's, like, you're doing the work of 1,000 men and women, because it's like, yeah, like I said, RE there. I mean, like for me, like RE and sex education was like the same class, which was probably the reason there was an issue. Yeah, let's just lump these two classes in together. But like, I would like to hope, and I don't know, but like in the last, I mean, I left school in 2012. I'd really love to think that it's moved on a bit in the last 10 plus years. I don't know that it necessarily has, but for me, I mean, like, you'll maybe know if you've been, you know, if you do work in schools and stuff. I mean, that is a huge step in itself, like, to bring people in to talk about that sort of stuff. Yeah. Because it's the first step to actually introducing it to the curriculum properly. Yeah. Because there's a lot of box ticking. Yeah. And I think it's like, right, well, how do we do this in a practical way? And I think the talks that you do, like, it's really, we'll be talk about a lot of stuff in the office, but just about the Cahonas side of things and discussing how we were going to approach this show, and we were looking into the work that you do. Like everybody, you know, myself included, you know, totally respects what you do, because it is amazing. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that. No, and it means a lot. And that generally, that type of feedback is always great, especially for us. I mean, it's funny when we talk to people, because, like, I mean, you've known yourself. Like, I think Richie's done an amazing job in how Cahonas looks online. I think it's sterling, some of the work, and even the videos, you know, that he's got together with Chaz. It's been brilliant. And you look at that, and then you'll talk to, like, some big companies, and they'll go, so one of your team, are they going to, and like, yeah, it's the two of us, and the folk are going, what, 2 years? I'm like, yep. It's just literally, and it's only been the two of us in the last 18 months, you know. It's like Richie was doing that for 14 years himself, you know. So it's incredible, the work that can get done, you know, if you're passionate.
That's exactly what I was going to say. If you're passionate, it's similar to ICW. Like, as I say, there's 4 of us in the office. You know, 5 if you include Duncan, who's the CEO. You've obviously got a roster full of wrestlers, but in terms of the day-to-day, like, it's a very, very small office. But similar to Cahonas, for the work, for the output, it's really quite like you sit sometimes and you're like Adam Carell was sitting across me yesterday and he said, you know, it is, like, we're doing a lot of work just now with like trying to offer, I should say, work experience to colleges and uni students.
All right, cool.
Because we were sitting yesterday and we're like, you know, we're 4 people and between us we're doing, you know, we're PR, comms, video editing, sound engineering, graphic design, creative writing, events management, you name it. Somebody in that office out of the 4 people that do the day-to-day stuff has to do that job.
Yeah.
And it is because we're passionate. And see if there's something like, say I go back to the office this afternoon and something comes into my inbox and I don't know how to do it, I'll find out before 4:00.
Right.
Or if somebody else doesn't know, they'll do this. Do you know what I mean? Like that's why it's incredibly supportive in that aspect. Like if I don't know how to do something on Premiere, maybe from a video editing perspective, I'll ask Adam, who's director of TV media, because the guy's an encyclopedia for that stuff. Similarly, social media, PR, outward facing sort of media relations, people will ask me. Yeah. So it works really well. Yeah. And yeah, like I can totally empathise with the challenges that are had with such a small team. But at the end of the day, when you're sitting and you can chill out on your couch, you think what amazing work that you can do with such a small team. Yeah. You're doing like, and it's Cahonas especially, like there will be, I know because I worked in the third sector for years, there'll be charities that are so much bigger that will look like they're doing less work. Yeah. And you're like, you have like 200-300 employees. Yeah. But yeah. This
isn't a kind of better thing, but probably are more funded because they are bigger.
Absolutely.
So it's
absolutely. But it's almost like resting on the laurels, like similar to ICW. Like we don't get any grants and anything like that. I mean, we're not a charity for a start, so like we're relying on ticket income and stuff like that. And see, if you don't sell an event, you don't get paid. Yeah. So like we are all hungry, and see when that hunger stops, we're gubbed. Yeah. So we go into the work, you know, the office every morning, we sit and we do our work and we leave, we come in the next day, we do it again, rinse, repeat. And that's in amongst, by the way, doing a bunch of other stuff. Like I do freelance comms anyway. Yeah. ICW takes up the biggest part of my time, but you know, you've got your Scot and like Jack Jester, who has just finished a 56, I think, panto show run. Right, wow. You know, he's filmed the Scots and he's doing other acting work and stuff like that. We were laughing yesterday because he recorded something a few years ago, and I don't know that he'd made it public knowledge, but it was like the Euros or something. He did like a voiceover for it for BBC Scotland. Right. And he doesn't know anything about football, but if you listen to this voiceover, you're like, yes, it's like the bagpipes are going, the drums and all that, and he's like, are you ready, Scotland? And you're like, yes. And he's like, I don't know anything about football.
That's excellent.
So we've all got our own things going on, but without that hunger, without that passion, ICW would never be what it is. Yeah. And I think as well, like, see, like me and Richie were genuinely talking about this before we came out, and it was that team dynamic, you know, and you get, see the fact that you can work in an office with, like, if there's the 4 of you there and you are all bouncing off each other, like there's certain personalities that just make something. And I suppose, like, when you look at, you know, ICW and you look at the, like, even the production value, you know, of like this, you know, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but that smaller kind of wrestling company, you know, it's just as good as if you had millions of, you know, pounds that you could have had it thrown at you, you know. That's again, it goes back to providing the closest thing to what people see on TV. And now we are on TV. I mean, you know, we've got monthly live events on Triller TV Plus, but yeah, that a lot of that's Duncan because of his background with events, and he has promoted, you know, like Fallout Boy, and he's just sold, I think, his highest pre-sale ever for Sleep Token at the Hydro and stuff like that. So like Duncan is the guy when it comes to that stuff. Yeah. And so he will always, you sometimes will be sitting and he'll just go, maybe we want to do something different with the screens. And it's like, this is when we're talking about not having a clue. We all just kind of go, batter in, mate, because like short of maybe holding a ladder, you know what you're doing. Like you get your crew in and you know, you go in there the next day and it's like, wow, like what the unit we're in was Tedesco tiles. And so it was a warehouse. but now it is a TV studio.
Aye.
It doesn't look like a TV studio. It is a TV studio. It's got all the singing and dancing. Like, as I say, you can do anything, basically play anything on those screens. It's similar to WWE. They moved away from those physical sets 15 years ago because it meant that they could adapt to anything they wanted to put in those screens. And so we can make somebody look like they're lovable and they can come out and it's all clouds and bright lights, and then you have somebody like Zero, who's like our version of the boogeyman, come out and it's all dark and, you know, it's all totally different. You've got like monsters on the screen and stuff like that. Like, it's one of those things that's very hard, by the way, to describe, but you have to see it to know what I'm talking about. So
people know who Zero and what he looks like, you know, when they'll
like
understand.
you talking about separating the character from the person, like that probably is one of the few people I won't go into too much detail on, because he is so believable. My partner met him after one of the last shows. She was like, "Oh, I met Zero, by the way, he was lovely." I'm like, "I know, but you would think, you know, he's the kind of guy you would cross the street if you saw him." Yeah, absolutely.
Head down.
Yeah, great guy. But I can't believe I'm talking how much of a great guy Zero is on a podcast. He is. But like, ICW is full of characters, and it's just like, that's what makes it. Like, for us, it's a variety show. So you've got your wrestlers there that do your indie style wrestling. You get your big characters, you get your hardcore wrestlers like Jester, and like, he's defending his title in a death match, the first one ever in the Asylum this Sunday, which in and of itself is a spectacle. It's not, ironically, it's not my favourite style of wrestling, although I'll be in there refereeing it on Sunday, and I've been part of ICW, which built its name on those death matches. But there's something for everyone. And you could bring your granny, you could bring your cousin, your girlfriend, your boyfriend. It could, apart from anybody under 18, it caters to everybody. There's always going to be something for somebody. And I think that's what really makes ICW special. It's character driven, as opposed to, let's just watch these two guys in boots and trunks do holds for half an hour. Like, nobody wants to see that. It's 2024, talking about evolving to those, you know, those audience preferences. That's what we're doing just now. It's like, we're looking at the stats and we're seeing, right, in the square go, for example, you've got 30 people entering, men and women, and you know, you can see when what the retention is, and when the viewership spikes, or people are engaging with it. And so you're able to kind of pick out what's working. So that's what's really useful for us.
And I think that's it must be so useful when you're able to kind of like look at that, and like from a creative standpoint, you know, because you're not going to placate fans, but to show where the trends go, you know, like, you have to keep up with what they want, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, and it's like, again, some things won't work. Like, there'll be things that we'll do that might not land, but the 3 weeks leading up, we've decided, right, let's try this. Sometimes that's the only way you can go. You can try it and see what works, and if it fails, like, I love, like, I can't even remember who came up with it, but fail fast. Like, cool, didn't work, on to the next thing, and maybe that will. So for us, it's just about that. Like, we'll try stuff. Like, it's about this new era as well. Like, it wouldn't be a new era if you weren't trying new stuff. So we're trying new stuff, but again, picking those things that worked before, mixing them, seeing what works, new coat of paint, satisfying those new fans and the new fans, older fans and the new fans that are coming in.
So see, well, like with the new era, what is it that means to you? Like, for ICW, what is that new era, and what is the vision that you have going forward?
Well, I think it's like the three strands of the family shows, the adult over 18s product, and the training. I think so this all sort of happened towards the end of last year. Obviously, the big thing is Mark, who created ICW and ran it for so many years, is gone. With that, there's going to be natural changes. The buck stopped with Dallas before, whereas now the buck stops with us. So there will be things that in a meeting I suggest that Scott might disagree with. There'll be things that maybe Scott and I agree on, but Lee and Adam don't. But the good thing about that is we've got experience, I think, 40 years or something in the business, like joined experience. So we can all put our 2 cents in and see what we think would work. And I think just in terms of what is new about it, anybody that watched Square Go on Triller TV Plus a few weeks ago can see that things are changing, like the match types, the characters, sponsors. I don't want to go into that too heavily just now because there's things I can't say because of, we've not announced it, but sponsorship's a big area that we are exploring just now. So, like you've got your WWE doing your Cinnamon Toast Crunch match at WrestleMania and stuff like that. There's things like that we're exploring as well. There's just loads of different avenues for growth. And for us, it's like, we don't want to just be a pro wrestling company. Like that's what we keep banging that drum of, you can go and see that elsewhere. Like you can go and see a wrestling show in a gym hall with no curtain, just a swing door and the wrestlers making their entrance while like kids hit them. Like that's not what we do. There's a few things, as I say, that are in the pipeline, but I can't talk about just now. There's almost like more obvious things that I wish I could talk about just now that would point to, well, that's new. But I think it's just about proving it to fans when they watch the live shows, whether that's coming to them in person or watching Triller TV Plus. You'll see for yourself how it's different, what's new about it. Like the fact, as I say, like the people that are coming to the shows this weekend that we know for a fact disliked the product 5 years ago. Well, we're doing something that is satisfying them now because, like for example, the death match in the Asylum, like that's not something we've ever done. And the Asylum was always associated with WWE Network, right? Because it was only ever converted to a studio because we had to film closed door shows during COVID, right, to fulfill our contract obligations for WWE. Right. So everybody associated the Asylum with, that's not really a proper show though, is it? Yeah. And so we've worked very hard in the last few months to change that perception. The end of the Fight Club brand as well. Going back to standalone shows, everything being live streamed. I feel like now I'm thinking, right, what are the literal things that are new? But along with the themes and the sort of the way that the stories are going, which will obviously develop over time. Yeah, we've moved away from that weekly taping schedule. Yep. Because I think as well for people, like we're talking about the evolving trends and consumers and stuff like that, like see if people know that a wrestling show was taped 5 weeks ago and the results and the photos and the videos were on Twitter that night, why are they going to watch the broadcast in a month? Of course, aye. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like, why would you bother? So, and we saw that. We saw those trends. Like we saw that the viewership for Fight Club was dipping. But when we did the last Fight Club and we live streamed it, of course, that's the one that went like that. Skyrocketed. But it was in line with our strategy moving into 2024, right? We know live works. We know that, if we tape, people aren't necessarily going to engage with that as much. Digital's another big thing for us, like how to use certain platforms in a way that, so like for example, people are looking for classic ICW content. Triller only uploads a certain portion of that, and we don't have ICW on demand anymore. So a lot of our older content's being put onto a subscription model for YouTube members. Right, so there's that, and a host of other things. But yeah, I feel like I could talk like all day about that stuff. It's exciting. Like I feel like I should shut up now because I will say something that I shouldn't say. You go to Tom Holland and just to do spoilers. Yeah, we're running Hampden. We're doing Hampden in November. Yeah, awesome. I suppose as well as that, like we are beyond grateful as Cahonas that you guys have chose to kind of do that for us as well, and I think it's great to be associated with a big Scottish brand like ICW as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and to have that out there, and we're dead excited, and again, being a couple of wrestling fans and geeks, you know what I mean? Like for you guys to do a show and have it like, and do the advertising we've done it and include us, because it's funny, again, me and Richie were talking about that, it's not a charity show, it's a wrestling show that just happens to have, Cahonas like being able to kind of say like, check your buzz. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Alongside it. It's like using, like for us, like we don't, I mean, plenty of people are selfish. We don't necessarily want to be selfish when it comes to, we know we've got a big audience. Like we've got over, I feel like 200,000 subscribers on YouTube. We've got thousands of people that are watching the product every month in Triller TV Plus. Our social numbers across the board are in the millions. Yeah. We want to be able to use our platform to amplify the message of brands and organisations that are doing work that we really admire. And Cahonas Scotland was top of that list. Like, as I say, I'd been speaking to Richie about this for years. Like, there's always been that odd conversation where we've said, could we make something work? But it never really lined up. And as soon as we were all kind of, we can actually do what we want now. Because with Mark stepping away and us becoming the key stakeholders, and Duncan very much going, look, I'm here, you guys make this work. Right. It was a no-brainer for us to start working with people like yourselves. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it's like I say, we just love the fact that we get to be involved in a wrestling event anyway, you know. So it was funny because I said to Richie, and I think he had said it to you, I was like, I'll take a bump, Richie, I'll take a bump. And he's like, no, Thomas says like they go pretty stiff. I'm like, I'll not take a bump. Yeah. I'll not take a bump. It's honestly, you'd be surprised how hard. You might have felt it when you get in for that photo the other week, but it's solid. Oh, it is. Like it's basically steel, like a wooden boards, and then like, you know, like the blue gym mats you would get in PE. Yeah. And you'll have a spring in the middle just to absorb some of the impact, but it's painful. Again, like this, if it wasn't, I wouldn't be a referee, I would be a wrestler. Yeah. So. It took me all of my strength and our willpower not to like just do a fall just to see. But then when we were walking, I walked around the ring and I was feeling it. I went, yeah, no, like my back's sore enough as it is. You know, I'm 40 years old. You know. Yeah, it's, I think Chris Jericho said in his book, it was like the equivalent, a doctor, I don't know if this is true, a doctor said that it's the equivalent of being hit by a car at 12 miles per hour every time you take a bump. Oh, really? Which doesn't sound very bad, but if you do 40 of those a match, imagine getting hit by a car over and over. And if you're, you know, performing, you know, very near 300 days a year, you know, so it does, like, even refereeing, like, I'm going to sound like pathetic now, like, the Monday morning or the Tuesday, you'll get up and you'll be like, oh my God, my knees. So like, I can only imagine what the wrestler's like. I can already hear Lee tell me to shut up when he watches this back, because by the time he watches this, he'll have done his death match on the Sunday. Yeah, that was the thing that I noticed as well. Like, seeing his scars, like for all his, like the kind of matches that he's had, and you go, for anybody who watches that on TV and doesn't see that live, like, wow, like that's some heavy scarring for some brutal matches. Yeah, it's its own animal. Like it's almost so. It's a branch of pro wrestling, but it's very difficult to talk to people about, because they either go, "Oh, there's no way that's real," and you're like, there's no convincing you. Look at this guy's arm. Or there's people that are like, you know, they want to go into all the gory details and stuff, and you're kind of like, at the end of the day, it's art, and you know, it's in the eye of the beholder. And whilst it might not be one person's particular person's taste, it will be to others, and that's why, you know, like for example on Sunday we're opening the show with an Iron Man match, 30 minutes, independent style, high flying, blink and you'll miss it action. Brilliant. But we're ending it with the death match, and in between there you've got a host of other things, and it will satisfy the needs of the people that are there one way or another. And if they don't like the blood and guts, they'll be away before the main event. But the whole show has been very much promoted as the first death match in the asylum, so I feel like people know what they're in for by this point. But I'm really excited. As I say, record breaking numbers in the asylum. We're on track to have the highest numbers on Triller Plus TV as well. Square Go was the highest ever for us, so everything's kind of going up just now. Touch wood. But Hollywood's the best wood, mate. But yeah, really excited to move forward. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking bollocks to me, essentially. You know what I mean? It's honestly great to have you here, and it's been great meeting you as well. You know, it's the fact that, you know, I got to meet you at Asylum, and that was such a cool first introduction to like meeting you, and then seeing, you know, what ICW is, do you know? So no, thank you for that. Let's say if you want to kind of promote Show That Weekend, the about your Baws show as well, and all your Instagram stuff and things like that. So ICW, first of all, we've got upcoming shows on universe.com/ICW. That's also where you can get tickets to Blockbuster Pro Wrestling, the family friendly brand. If you want to join GPWA, if you've ever thought of trying to be a pro wrestler, you can visit insanewrestling.co.uk/training. And for me, my socials are at Thomas Kearins. I also run a training program for wrestling referees. It's the first of its kind in the UK, and you can visit wrestlingreferee.co.uk for more info. Brilliant. Thank you so much, mate. Cheers. Thank you very much. Cheers.